Hey, what's up you guys, the Curious Owl here, and today I am going to be talking about my thoughts on Kissed by an Angel by Elizabeth Chandler. Now, for those of you that don't know, I have done several reread series over the course of my channel for the last about 3 years now, and what that consists of is basically me going back to books and series that I had read when I was in high school and rereading them for the first time since having first read them. I have done that with the Beautiful Creatures series by Cami Garcia and Margaret Stohl, with the Morganville Vampires by Rachel Caine, and recently with the Thirst series by Christopher Pike. And now we are going into the Kissed by an Angel series by Elizabeth Chandler. Now, for those of you that don't know, the Kissed by an Angel series was actually first published in the 1990s, the very mid-90s basically. This was basically a supernatural, paranormal, young adult romantic story, and had a little bit of mystery, a little bit of thrillerness to it, and was actually something that I hadn't really first read until I was in high school. I had never heard of it until I was about probably freshman or sophomore in high school. Now, as you can see, my copy that I have here, which is an omnibus of the first 3 books in the series, is well loved, because this book was not only read by me quite a few times when I was a high schooler, but was passed around to my younger sister and to her friends, who all loved this series. Because the series was written first in the 1990s, there were originally only 3 books, and that was because the author at the time had basically a pretty well-established trilogy. Also, one thing to note is that back in the 1990s, especially with young adult books, most young adult stories were only about 250 to 300 pages. It was not very often you would find books that were bigger than that. We saw that actually with the Christopher Pike series Thirst, which you can go watch my reread series of that if you would like to. The first 6 books in that series were all under 250 pages each, which was bizarre to me because most books now, even in YA, can sometimes be almost 600 pages. Usually between 350 to 600 pages is the threshold that we have currently. So to see another young adult series with about 250 pages max per book was interesting to see that, you know, it was just a consistent thing. There was a second trilogy of the Kissed by an Angel series that was created again in the 2010s, which we also saw again with the Thirst series, a extenuation of the series because there was more to a storyline, or almost a secondary storyline that was created for the series that piggybacked off of the original. And I remember seeing the sequels first and then realizing that there was an original trilogy. So I had read the original trilogy and then the 3 books that had come out in the 2010s that also had a new cover design, which caused the omnibus to have a similar cover design to it. Now, in this particular omnibus, there are, like I said, the original 3 stories of this series. Today we're going over the first one, which is Kissed by an Angel. So I've been talking about this series for a long time. What the hell is it even about? Well, let me tell you. So this follows a 17-year-old girl named Ivy, who Ivy is a lover of angels. She is a very, I'm gonna say, not quite Christianized person, because there's no real alignment to a particular religion in this. Ivy just believes that she has guardian angels because when she was very young, she had a very scary moment that had happened to her in her life that caused her to believe that there was a guardian angel, because she believed that a guardian angel had saved her. And unfortunately for her, she loses that love and that belief because her boyfriend Tristan gets killed in a car accident. Now, Kissed by an Angel, we actually don't see Tristan being actually an angel until much later, because we initially start the book where they get into the accident, and then we backtrack to learn about how Ivy and Tristan came together in the first place. And they first meet when Ivy's mother gets remarried to a fairly affluent man in this small town, and she brings in a stepbrother named Gregory, who's kind of this really strange guy. He's not super nice, but he's not a complete asshole either. He's kind of just got this really weird brother energy that you're just like, okay, I don't know what to do with you, so you're gonna go over there kind of thing. She meets Tristan, though, during the reception because he's working at the reception in the catering business. And he is smitten with Ivy. You learn very quickly he's been in love with her since he first saw her when she moved to their school, and he has been vying for her attention for months, and she does not pay attention to him at all. And so what basically happens is he gets in with her younger brother, Philip, who is about 9 years old, very young, very impressionable. When he makes friends with him very quickly, Ivy starts to think that Tristan might not be so bad, but she's also someone who is not very good when it comes to accepting any kind of romantic feelings. You don't necessarily know why. She just has a very hard time with opening up to people, and you see that as like a really common thing with Tristan specifically. For some reason, she's very closed off. You don't necessarily know why. There's no indication as to any kind of problem with that, other than possibly the fact that her father had left their mother and Philip and herself when she was younger. We don't really know otherwise, though, why she's so closed off to Tristan's advances. But she does obviously, you know, start dating him, and she does develop this beautiful relationship with him, and then he dies in the car accident, and she loses all belief in angels, in guardian angels specifically. But we find out that Tristan is not completely dead. He is dead in a sense, but he is actually Ivy's guardian angel. And the reason he is her guardian angel is because he thinks that he is meant to protect her in some way, but he doesn't know how. And the circumstances around Tristan's death were very strange. Things about the accident itself that he and Ivy were in are kind of unexplainable at this moment in time. And so Tristan starts to think that maybe there was something a little bit more sinister going on. And over the course of this time, Ivy is grieving. She is grieving the loss of the love of her life. She's grieving the loss of one of her best friends in the world. And I think in a lot of ways she's also grieving for her lost belief of angels, because it's almost as if she really wants to continue to believe, but it's so hard for her because she believes also that the angels took somebody that she loved out of her arms, and she will never be able to find a love like she had with Tristan ever again. That's pretty much a big rundown of what this first book is about. So my thoughts on it were that I honestly fell right back in love with the story. Don't get me wrong, this book is super indicative of its time period. The writing is not super nice. It's kind of cheesy, almost like a 90s rom-com. I mean, if you look at the original cover of this book, it screams 90s, like the 90s romance novels that I would see in like the supermarket. That's what this book reminds me of, is that kind of vibe. But I just remember so many warm, fuzzy feelings that I had from when I first read this series in high school, and honestly, all of that came flooding back to me. I have so many great memories with this series that I probably am going to be a lot biased by reviewing this series, but structurally, there was not really that much of an issue. I think really the only critique I had was the writing is kind of dated, but even then it was so enjoyable. It was a very fast read. It felt like almost no time had passed from beginning to end of this book when I had read it, and I think that just shows too that the story is so captivating, and just, you know, it sucks you in, and you feel the warm fuzzies in your stomach and in your heart, and you just want there to be good things and happiness and love and light, and none of that's happening and you're heartbroken, but you still love it for the heartbreak kind of thing. That's kind of the general idea of what I get from this series, and it's just, again, I'm so biased by this. It's one of my most favorite series from my childhood. I love it so much. It's one of the series I think that really got me into wanting to write, because I adored it. It was so fun. And the fact that this series not only meant so much to me, but to my sister when we were growing up, we bonded over this series so much. And it always warms my heart to think about it. One thing that I kind of wish, though, other than the writing style being dated, and I think that this is going to be something I'm going to say until I can get through this entire omnibus, is that I think that these 3 books just could have been one. But again, as I've said before, and I've said this plenty of times over the course of my Thirst reread series, is that the books that were published in the 90s, they were only made because that was all they could sell at that point. They weren't able to sell books that were more than 300 pages at the time because that was not what was marketable. So the fact that I want to read all 3 of these books into one as opposed to 3 separate, stories is very indicative of the privilege I have of living in this day and age where most young adult novels, like I said, are anywhere between 350 to 600 pages, and then more than that you start getting into like adult books. So it's a very clear indication to me that the reason I couldn't rate this a 5-star is indicative of the fact that I've come to love longer stories now, and that has nothing to do with how much I love this book. I still love it with my entire heart and soul, but it's not, I think, on par with what I would have expected from much more recent stories and much more recent books. So this does, I think, have a special place in my heart and always will, but I can see why they would want to possibly republish and extend this series, because it probably wouldn't by itself attract very many readers. I think that by extending the story and republishing it and being like, ooh, shiny new cover, let's talk about this old story and then read the new one, it makes it much more approachable for a lot of people, because it's like, oh, it's all convenient right here. They're almost like short stories to us, and then we can read the new fully fledged novels that come out because they're extensions of the story. And, we've already read the first 3 and this one, so why don't we just read the new one? So I get Kissed by an Angel 4 out of 5 stars because, again, I think just as indicative of its time period, it's not 100% perfect, but it still holds such a very special place in my heart, and I was so excited to be able to get back to this series for the first time since I read it in high school, because again, it just gave me all the warm fuzzies. It made me happy and made me sad. I laughed so much at some of the banter that was involved in this book that I had completely forgotten about. So let me know what you guys thought of the first book of the Kissed by an Angel series. If you read it, I would love to know how many other people read this series. But that's gonna be it for this video. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. If you guys did enjoy it, please do give it a big thumbs up, and if you haven't already and you'd like to be and would like to see more videos like this, go ahead and hit that button down below and subscribe to become an owlet in our flock, and I will see all of you guys in my next video. Bye guys!